This is Jigoro Kano, the founder of Kodokan Judo. Professor Kano learned the traditional Japanese martial art, Jujutsu, and transformed it into something new, employing the objectives and methodology appropriate to a new era. In 1882, he named it Kodokan Judo. Judo, which Professor Kano promoted with all his might for half a century, gradually became more and more popular around the world, and has now achieved recognition as an Olympic event. Judo is now practiced in 178 countries throughout the world. Judo techniques can be divided into three categories. They are Nage Waza, throwing techniques, Katame Waza, grappling techniques, and Atemi Waza, striking techniques. Atemi Waza, however, are not used in judo matches. Nage Waza or throwing techniques can be divided into Tachi Waza, standing techniques, and Stemi Waza, sacrificing techniques. There are 67 techniques in all, and they're classified as shown here. Let's look at the basics of each technique and how it's applied, focusing on the differences between techniques that may appear similar with examples from actual competitions. Seoi Nage. In Seoi Nage, you grasp one side of your opponent's collar and put your elbow underneath his arm as you lift and throw him over your shoulder. Here, you grasp your opponent's sleeve as well as one side of his collar. This Seoi Nage was applied after stepping out wide to the side. It's a variation of Seoi Nage and not a Tai Otoshi. This Seoi Nage was applied just with an upward lift of the right hand. He did not grasp his opponent's sleeve. Here he grasped one side of his opponent's collar. A Seoi Nage executed from a low position. Ippon Seoi Nage. In Ippon Seoi Nage, you hold and control one of your opponent's arms as you lift and throw him over your shoulder. When applying an Ippon Seoi Nage, you can also step out wide to the side of your opponent's right foot. An Ippon Seoi Nage applied as if wrapping your opponent's body around you. An Ippon Seoi Nage applied with your arm turned. Let's look at some examples of Ippon Seoi Nage in competition.
Seoi Otoshi. Seoi otoshi is a throwing technique where you take your opponent on your back and pull him straight down. As you throw, you can do so either with one knee or both knees on the floor. Seoi otoshi, moving from an ippon seoi nage position. In seoi nage, you throw your opponent by lifting him over, but in seoi otoshi, you throw him by pulling him down over you. Seoi otoshi on both knees. Whether it's seoi nage or seoi otoshi is decided by whether your opponent was lifted or pulled over. This is seoi nage with both knees on the floor. We judge so because after going down on both knees, the throw was made by raising the hip and hoisting the opponent's frame.
He kneels on his right foot to execute the throw.
Tai otoshi. There are various ways of executing tai otoshi depending on the situation. This is tai otoshi executed by drawing the opponent out. This is a tailing tai otoshi, executed the moment the opponent moves his leg back. In this tai otoshi, the opponent has been drawn out sideways. There are cases where tai otoshi is executed by grabbing one side of the collar. Double motion tai otoshi. It was executed first of all by lightly kicking the inside of the opponent's foot to make him lose balance. In another instance, you might cross your opponent's arms when executing the throw. By twisting your opponent's arms, his body goes off balance and his resistance is stopped.
Let's look at some examples of tai otoshi in competition. This tai otoshi started out as an uchimata.
Kataguruma. Kataguruma is a technique in which you haul your opponent up above you as you throw. As you can see, the throw is generally made by throwing your opponent down toward the tip of your foot. In Kataguruma, the throw can be made in any number of directions after you raise your opponent up. In this case, the opponent is thrown directly in front. It appears that this kind of throw was often used in the early days of modern judo. In this kataguruma, the body of the opponent is raised up high, and the throw is then made by bending backwards. The direction of the throws may differ, but these are all considered kataguruma, and the effect of the throw is recognized. Here you enter low on one knee, raise your opponent up and throw him down. Uki-otoshi. The tori, or active partner, pulls the uke, or passive partner, forward, goes down on one knee and pulls him down in front. The aim of practicing kata, or form, is to make students realize the principle behind the technique. In uki-otoshi, you sometimes step in the moment your opponent steps forward with his left foot, then execute your throw by pulling him off balance to one side of you. When your right hand is grasping the middle of the sleeve like this, you can force him to go off balance by pushing up on his elbow. Have another look. Dodging your opponent's osotogari by pulling back your leg, turn aside and then throw. This is also uki-otoshi. Sumi-otoshi. Sumi-otoshi is a throwing technique in which you shake your opponent off balance into the rear corner, then throw him by thrusting him down. Using your right hand, you pull up your opponent by grasping his left collar. You make your opponent lose balance by causing him to raise his left foot and shift his weight to his right heel. In another instance, you shift your grip from his left collar to the middle of his sleeve. You then push his elbow up to make him lose balance. Sumi-otoshi and uki-otoshi make up a pair. Let's now look at the difference between sumi-otoshi and uki-otoshi. In sumi-otoshi, you push and throw your opponent down to the rear. In uki-otoshi, you pull and throw your opponent down to the front. The direction of off-balancing and throwing your opponent differs. Sumi-otoshi was one of the favorite techniques of Kyuzo Mifune, the 10th Dan. Pay close attention to the principle of the technique, where you force your opponent's left foot to come forward and throw him down in a backward direction. Sukui Nage. In a tournament, the technique of placing a hand underneath your opponent's thigh and lifting him up is often used. When your opponent tries a harai goshi, you should pull your foot back to open yourself up for an attack, then put your hand in from behind your opponent to lift him up and throw him down. Similarly, when your opponent comes at you with an osotogari, then you should again put your hand in from behind and throw. Again, when he attempts an uchimata, you can evade his motion, then putting your hand in from behind, transform it into a sukui nage. On occasion, you may throw using your hips as you lift your opponent. This time, the opponent is lifted by putting a hand in from the front. When your opponent tries osotogari, pull your foot back, then as you do so, put your hand in from the front and lift him up.
A dynamic sukui nage. It looks like a morotegari, but since she merely lifted and dropped her opponent with both hands, it's a sukui nage. A morotegari is when you reap your opponent's legs towards you with both hands and throw him directly to the rear.
Obi otoshi. Obi otoshi can be considered a kind of sukui nage. It is one of the techniques of jujutsu, the traditional martial art. Grasp the front part of your opponent's belt. Push him directly back to cause him to lose balance, lift him from the side and throw him down towards the rear. The principle of obi otoshi is very much like that of sukui nage. Obi otoshi is hardly ever used in modern tournaments, but is one of the techniques used in free exercises of Kodokan Judo. Morotegari. Morotegari is often used in a competition. There are different ways of starting morotegari. In this case, you catch your opponent the moment you come to grapple with him. This is morotegari, where you first pull your opponent forward. In this case, seoi nage turns into a morotegari. When you attempt seoi nage, your opponent will react by bending backwards. Morotegari is then performed without a pause. In following on from a seoi nage, you sometimes make one complete turn, as you can see here.
This is a morotegari.
Kuchiki daoshi. Kuchiki Daoshi is a technique in which you take your opponent's leg and push him down backwards. It's often used in a tournament. You push your opponent down by taking hold of his leg, but sometimes it's executed from the inside as well as from the outside. This is a follow-on technique starting from kataguruma. A kataguruma is attempted, but as your opponent defends himself by shifting his weight backwards, the throw is made by grasping his leg from inside. This time we start with the opponent's osotogari. When the opponent attacks with osotogari, defend yourself by opening up, turning sideways. As you do so, catch him from inside his legs to make him fall. Here you down your opponent by catching his leg from outside. When you perform kouchigari, your opponent counters by raising the foot that's been swept from the side. Grasp his leg from outside at that moment to make him fall. This time, continuing from ouchigari. The moment your opponent raises his foot to counter the move, you catch his leg from outside to drop him.
A dazzling kuchiki daoshi executed with speed. This kuchiki daoshi started out as an uchimata.
Kibis gaeshi. Kibis gaeshi is a technique in which you fell your opponent by taking hold of his heel. There are two ways of performing kibis gaeshi. Either by grasping the inside of your opponent's heel, or by grasping the outside. First make seoi nage, then turn once to face your opponent to follow on to kibis gaeshi. First, grasping your opponent's heel from outside. Catch your opponent's heel from outside as he tries to withdraw, then cut him down by pushing with your left hand. In the following case too, you grasp the heel from outside. From kouchigari, you make your opponent fall by taking the heel of the raised foot from outside. Let's compare techniques. In kuchiki daoshi, you push your opponent down by putting your hand on his leg. In kibis gaeshi, you grasp your opponent's heel and cut him right down on the spot.
Reap your opponent's heel with one hand and throw her.
Kochigaeshi. In Kochigaeshi, you dodge your opponent's Kochigari, then drop him by twisting to either right or left. When your opponent attacks with a Kochigari, you evade by raising the foot that's been struck, then make a throw by twisting him to the left. This time, twisting to the right. Look closely at how you evade the attack and how you make the twist. This is Deashi Harai, brushing off the starting move. When the Kochigari of your opponent is brushed off like this, it'll be called Deashi Harai. This is Hizaguruma. The opponent's Kochigari changes into a Hizaguruma. Kochigaeshi is classified as a hand technique, not a foot technique.
Although she didn't twist her body, it's a kochigaeshi.
Uchimata Sukashi. When your opponent attacks with Uchimata, you move your right foot back, turn and twist. The opponent, losing his target, will only hit empty air and fall, drawing a large arc as he does so. Occasionally, you may raise one of your feet up high to dodge the attack. This also is an application of Uchimata Sukashi.
In Uchimata Sukashi, you use your opponent's momentum to throw him forward. It's a tewaza or hand technique. Yama Arashi. Shiro Saigo, the sixth Dan, is considered to be the model of the hero of the novel Sanshiro Sugata. Though small in stature, his fierce performance won him the praise. There were no Yama Arashi to speak of before or after Saigo. Yama Arashi is performed by grasping your opponent's collar and sleeve on the same side, lifting him up as in Harai Goshi, then dropping him using the hip. With your right hand placed inside the collar of your opponent, with the thumb inside, push against his right chest. Push your opponent down. Then, just as he tries to raise himself, jump in and throw him. The foot movement is similar to that of Harai Goshi. Your toes should be put close to your opponent's ankle as you brush it upwards. Simultaneously, lift with the right hand while brushing upwards with the right foot, then throw in a large motion upwards.
or goshi. In or goshi, you pull your opponent forward with your arm around his waist, then throw on your waist. Move in with your hip low. Make your throw only after your opponent's hip is sufficiently close. With your left hand, pull your opponent out off balance, forward to your left. Bring his waist sufficiently close to place him on your hips. Then, with both elbows outstretched, pull him straight up to throw. With your left hand under your opponent's side, as you come to grapple, pull his waist close and perform orgoshi.
And now let's look at the technique Ogoshi.
Ukigoshi. In ukigoshi, you draw your opponent's waist in close using one of your arms, then throw using the twisting motion of your waist. In the practice form, the throw is made as your opponent attacks, as if to strike. In ukigoshi, you throw in a twisting motion, after bending back fully, using your left hip as the fulcrum. Your shoulder is placed deep under your opponent's arm, and your arm secures his waist positioned parallel to his belt. Look once again at how you bend your back, how your shoulder should be positioned, and how your waist is twisted. This is a rare film showing Professor Kano explaining his favorite technique, ukigoshi, before the practice hall of Tokyo Higher Normal School in the early part of the century. Tsurigoshi. In tsurigoshi, you grasp your opponent's belt from behind, then bringing him in close, lift and throw on your hip. You must defend against your opponent's tsurikomigoshi while you grasp his belt from under his arm as you throw. In this form of tsurigoshi, you grasp your opponent's belt over his shoulder. Pulling your opponent forward, you grasp his belt over his shoulder and throw using tsurigoshi. Throwing as you grasp the front part of your opponent's belt is also an application of the tsurigoshi technique. It's called a tsurigoshi only when the belt is grasped in making the throw. Tsurikomigoshi. This is the kata form of tsurikomigoshi. The moment your opponent protects himself by bending backwards, lower your hips and making them the fulcrum of your throw, pull him down with both your arms. In randori, you pull your opponent up with both arms and throw him on your hips when moving either forwards or backwards. Take firm hold of the rear of your opponent's jacket when he's bent forward in a defensive posture, to throw, pulling him up. This is also tsurikomigoshi.
ですね。
音がしますね。
音がするぐらいで。
あっ、入った日本。
袖吊り込み腰。You then have a choice of either taking hold of his sleeve opening like this, or taking hold of the elbow section of his sleeve. When grasping the sleeve opening, you sometimes do so by pushing your opponent's hand away. The throw is made when he comes back with the same hand to grasp your jacket.
Let's look at some variations of 袖吊り込み腰. You can also throw your opponent without using a left hikite, lifting and pulling with just the right hand.
Koshi Guruma. In Koshi Guruma, you grasp your opponent by the neck and throw in a twisting motion with him on your hips. Control your opponent by holding his neck. Place your waist deep under him and push to the side. Koshi Guruma must be executed by holding your opponent's neck. Harai Goshi. In randori, you seldom put your hand in as shown here. Here the technique is performed by following the motion of your opponent who withdraws. Another chance for using Harai Goshi presents itself when you pull your opponent out sideways as shown here.
Let's look at some examples of harai goshi.
Hanegoshi. Hanegoshi is a technique of throwing your opponent by bouncing him up using the movement of your hip and foot. Hanegoshi executed in pursuit. It's made the moment your opponent retreats and brings his left foot down. The leg to be used in bouncing your opponent up should be bent a little. You bounce him up around the lower part of his knee. The technique may be used after guiding your opponent sideways. Let's look at the difference between Hanegoshi and Haraigoshi. In Hanegoshi, you bounce your opponent up with your leg bent. In Haraigoshi, your leg is straight as you bounce your opponent up. Uchimata looks similar to Hanegoshi, except you place your leg in between your opponent's legs and bounce him up. Utsurigoshi. Utsurigoshi is a kind of technique used when your opponent attacks with Koshi Waza, to raise him up and throw him on your hips. This is an Utsurigoshi technique which originates from the opponent's Hanegoshi. This is Utsurigoshi, which started out as an Uchimata by the opponent. You completely raise your opponent up by the waist and opening outwards, throw after moving him over on your hips. Ushirogoshi. This is the throw to use when your opponent attacks with Koshi Waza. You lift your opponent up and throw him down in front of you. This Ushirogoshi has developed from the opponent's Hanegoshi. Ushirogoshi executed just as your opponent tries to defend himself by curling his feet around yours. When changing into Ushirogoshi, your opponent may try defending himself by attacking your foot, as in Ouchigari. You then lift up the foot that's been attacked, hoist him up, then throw him down. This is in case your opponent defends himself using something like Kouchigari. If your opponent defends himself by using Kouchigari from inside, lift your foot that's been attacked, hoist him up, and throw him down. When your opponent attacks with Osotogari, push his waist up with your leg as you throw him down. Dakiage. When on the floor, you grasp your opponent's belt to make him bend over. Then, with your arms crossed, grip both lapels to bring him near. Then, standing up on both legs, raise him up at once deftly to the shoulder level. This technique is dangerous if your opponent is dropped after being raised up, so that the effect of the throw was recognized only in 1926. In those days, an ippon was declared when you succeeded in raising your opponent up to the shoulder-high level at one go. But today, the match is suspended with a call of mate. The effect of the technique is not recognized. Hizaguruma. Hizaguruma is a technique of supporting your opponent's knee with your foot as you throw. As your opponent tries to step forward, place the sole of your foot on his knee. Your opponent will turn and fall in a twisting motion. Hizaguruma performed after transferring your right hand from his left lapel to mid-sleeve. Another method, where your opponent's knee is bent. Step forward, execute the technique as if trying to bend your opponent's knee. He then falls in a twisting motion. Sasae tsurikomiashi. Sasae tsurikomiashi is executed by putting the sole of your foot on your opponent's ankle and throwing with that as the fulcrum. This is when your opponent has stepped forward. This is when you first lightly slap the inside of your opponent's left foot before executing the technique. The aim of this is to destroy your opponent's balance toward the tip of his right foot as you slap his foot from inside. Sasae tsurikomiashi made to look like o sotogari. When o sotogari is executed, your opponent defends by moving his weight forward in reaction. Turn your body at that moment, support with your foot as you throw. Harai tsurikomiashi. In Harai tsurikomiashi, you can throw your opponent by a sweeping blow to the rear of his foot. Here, the right foot of the opponent is swept away as he tries to retreat, and then he's thrown. You slap at the inside of the foot of your opponent as he tries to retreat to destroy his balance towards the tip of his right foot, then sweep him off his feet. Let's compare these two techniques. In Sasae Tsurikomi-ashi, you support your opponent's foot as you throw. In Harai Tsurikomi-ashi, you slap at your opponent's feet as you make your throw. Sasae and Harai are similar in form, but are different in that one has the Sasaeru, or supporting motion, whereas the other has the Harai Ageru, or sweeping motion.
Note how it differs from Sasae Tsurikomi-ashi. You need to sweep him forward.
Deashi Harai. In Deashi Harai, you sweep away one of your opponent's feet that's moved forward. When your opponent steps forward with his right foot, you open up with your right and sweep using your left foot. Here you sweep the retreating right foot of the opponent who's trying to move back. Here you lead your opponent around and sweep his right foot as he steps forward.
There are various ways to apply Deashi Harai. Here you sweep your opponent's right foot from under him just as his weight is shifting to his right foot. This is a Deashi Harai applied to counter your opponent's Kouchingari.
Okuriashi Harai. Okuriashi Harai is a technique where you sweep away both of your opponent's feet as you throw him. You lead your opponent around and sweep away both his feet. In Okuriashi Harai, you sweep away both your opponent's feet as they're together. Okuriashi Harai performed in 2 steps. You step in and sweep away the retreating foot of your opponent. Let's compare similar techniques. In Okuriashi Harai, you sweep away both your opponent's feet together. In Deashi Harai, you sweep away your opponent's foot as he steps forward. In Harai Tsurikomi-ashi, you sweep away your opponent's foot as it retreats towards the far corner. We decide the technique used according to these criteria. Tsubame Gaeshi. Tsubame Gaeshi is a technique of throwing your opponent by reversing his foot sweep into your own. Shift directly to your right or left. If your opponent attacks with Deashi Harai or Okuriashi Harai, you dodge it and turn it into Tsubame Gaishi. Even when moving back, you can also do likewise. Kosoto Gari. Changing your opponent's Taiotoshi into Kosoto Gari. Dodging your opponent's Taiotoshi, make him off balance, standing on both his heels, then cut him down in the direction of his toes using the back of your feet. Your foot will be placed on roughly the same line as your opponent's. When you're clipping, you should do so from your opponent's heels, in the direction of his toes, as if rubbing the surface of the mat. Your opponent should fall suddenly on the spot. Kosoto Gake. Kosoto Gake is a technique of throwing your opponent in a kind of pulling up motion. Sometimes the sole of the foot, at other times the leg is used for clipping. As the opponent withdraws his left foot, shifting his weight onto his other foot, you make him fall, hooking with your leg. You first try an uchimata, then the moment your opponent tries to defend himself, leaning backward, you turn it into Kosoto Gake. Here you take hold of the rear collar to bring your opponent in close, push him back to go off balance, then hook and make him fall. Now let's see the differences between similar techniques. In Kosoto Gari, you step in close to the side of your opponent, make him lose balance on his heel and clip him down. In Deashi Harai, the moment your opponent's foot is about to touch the mat, or when his foot is about to be lifted off the mat, you sweep his foot away to make him fall. In Kosoto Gake, you make your opponent lose his balance by making him stand on his heels as you face him directly. Clip as if to pull your opponent up and backwards as you throw him. Or Sotogari. Pull the right leg of your opponent out, then clip him down the moment it touches the mat. Pull his left leg out and cut down on his right leg. Or Sotogari from a Harai Tsurikomiashi. As your opponent advances to defend himself, cut down on his right leg. Here you push your opponent's elbow to make him lose balance and cut him down to the rear.
Osoto otoshi. In Osoto otoshi, you press your leg against your opponent's thigh from behind to make him fall on his back. An Osoto otoshi applied while holding your opponent's neck. With Osoto otoshi, you press your leg down against your opponent's thigh from behind to make him fall backwards.
Osoto guruma. In Osoto guruma, you begin your throw as in Osoto gari, but cut both your opponent's legs as you twist him down. Sometimes it's done in two movements. In a variation of this, you step behind both your opponent's legs with your right leg and make him fall as in Tai otoshi. Osoto gaeshi. As your opponent steps in trying to execute Osoto gari, you instead cut him down at that moment using the same throw. Here the opponent's Osoto gari is returned after a short delay. As you defend yourself against your opponent's Osoto gari by pulling back your right foot, you counter with an Osoto gari. As you defend against your opponent's Osoto gari by pulling back your left foot, you counter as if in Osoto gaeshi. Another example where an opportunity to counter came still later. or guruma. Or guruma is a technique where you make your throw by turning your opponent around your leg as an axis. Placing your leg near the lower abdomen of your opponent to use as an axis, you turn him around and throw. Oguruma was one of the favorite techniques of the 10th Dan, Kyuzo Mifune. He's captured the moment his opponent tries to step forward on his right foot. Ashiguruma. In Ashiguruma, you place your foot on your opponent's knee and throw with that as an axis. It's the same principle as Hizaguruma. Here an Osotogari is followed by Ashiguruma. First you execute Osotogari. When your opponent responds by withdrawing his left foot, you follow with Ashiguruma. Uchimata. Here you jump in to make your throw the moment your opponent withdraws his foot and touches the mat. Pull your opponent forward to make him assume jigotai, or a self-defense position, then jump in and apply uchimata just as he raises himself. This is a method generally known as ken-ken uchimata. You sweep with your left leg to destroy your opponent's balance and throw. First you make a move, as in performing ouchigari, then it's transformed into uchimata. In this situation, the objective is to cause your opponent to open up his legs and lean forward off balance. If your opponent defends himself by going down on one knee, he's still judged to be standing, and the uchimata is recognized.
Let's look at some examples of uchimata.
Uchimata Gaishi. In Uchimata Gaishi, when your opponent attacks with Uchimata, you counter by cutting back on his pivotal foot. O Uchigari. Pull your opponent's foot forward, then just as he tries to put his weight on that foot, clip his foot and make him fall. Here the opponent is pulled in close, then clipped the moment he tries to rise up. Here, when the opponent tries to get away by raising his foot, he's pushed forward and cut down off balance. Here, his leg is grabbed as you clip. Ouchigaeshi. Ouchigaeshi is a technique of countering your opponent's ouchigari with an ouchigari of your own. There are two ways of countering. One is to clip the foot that's clipping you, and the other is to clip your opponent's pivotal foot. Here the opponent's foot is clipped back as he tries to clip you. Here you counter by clipping both your opponent's attacking foot as well as his pivotal foot at the same time. Dodge your opponent's ouchigari and counter with a twisting motion. This is also ouchigaeshi. Use your opponent's force to return the attack by twisting to the right. First dodging your opponent's ouchigari, then throwing and twisting to your left. Kochigari. In Kochigari, you pull your opponent's foot forward, then you clip just as his foot comes down on the mat. In this instance, you cut down on the retreating foot of your opponent. Here, kochigari is performed by pulling the opponent off sideways, and here you cause your opponent to open his feet wide and clip after subduing his defense. Another method is to clip holding one of your opponent's feet. You may sometimes turn around once as you take hold of your opponent's foot and make him fall.
This is a kochigari. A kochigari applied with good timing. He countered his opponent's uranage with a kochigari. Japan's Okada has a distinctive style of kochigari, using his heel to reap his opponent's foot. The IJF name for this particular kochigari is kochi makikomi.
Hane goshi gaeshi. There are two ways of performing hane goshi gaeshi. One is a leg technique whereby you reap the pivotal foot of your opponent, and another is a hip technique of pushing up with the hip and twisting before countering. At times you hold the opponent's waist and reap your opponent's pivotal foot. With your hip, you bounce your opponent up in a large motion, then throw, twisting with both hands. When bouncing your opponent with your hip, you may at times simultaneously sweep upwards using your leg. Harai goshi gaeshi. In harai goshi gaeshi, you counter by reaping your opponent's pivotal foot for executing harai goshi. Just as your opponent attacks with harai goshi, you counter by extending your hips, then reap his pivotal foot to make him fall. The technique you use in countering, holding your opponent's hips, is also harai goshi gaeshi. Here the opponent's hips are being held, but as the counter action is reaping his pivotal foot, it's not ushiro goshi. Ushiro goshi is a technique where you raise your opponent up, holding him by the hip and letting him fall. Tomoe nage. In tomoe nage, You drop backwards while putting a foot on your opponent's lower abdomen and throw him back over your head. Here the technique is applied just as soon as your opponent steps forward and tries to put his weight on his foot. Here the opponent is pulled out forward at a slight angle as the technique is applied. This is the way you apply the technique when your opponent is in a right-handed position, making him go off balance on his toes and making him fall to his right as you throw. Here the throw is made over your head when your opponent is in the right-handed position. Uranage. The principle behind this form is to use the force of your opponent as you dodge his striking motion and to throw him, lifting him up on your hip as you sacrifice yourself by falling backward. Here the opponent's hanegoshi is transformed into an uranage. As the opponent attacks with a hanegoshi, hold his hips and bring him close and throw him directly behind over your shoulder. Another way is to hold and raise your opponent up from the front, then leaning back, throw by sacrificing yourself. Sumigaeshi. You start with both sides grappling in a defensive position. The technique was already in existence in Koryu, one of the older schools of Jiu-Jitsu, and the exact same form has been handed down. In the present-day Randori, we do not start directly from such a position. In Sumigaeshi, you fall backwards in a self-sacrificing movement. Place the instep of your right foot in the crook of his left knee and lift him up over your head. You pull your opponent forward, grasping his rear collar to execute Sumigaeshi. Here it's done by grasping your opponent's rear collar or his back and starts with Uchimata. Here it's a quick turn around from the Uchimata position, followed on with Sumigaeshi. komigaeshi. In a dandari situation, the throw is often made by pulling your opponent in close, holding his belt at the rear, then by throwing him, falling down in a self-sacrificing motion. The place where your foot is applied varies. There's no set place. This is the method of throwing by falling to your side. In this case, it becomes Yokostemi Waza. You pull your opponent's belt at the rear close and throw by falling sideways in a self-sacrificing motion. Tawara Gaeshi. In Tawara Gaeshi, you hold your opponent from above to pull him close, then throw as you fall face up in a self-sacrificing motion. In this situation, your opponent defends himself by leaning forward. This Tawara Gaeshi follows upon the opponent's Morote Gari. When your opponent jumps in close to execute Morote Gari, you pull your feet back, drop your hip low to defend yourself, then counter. Ukiwaza. In Ukiwaza, you step sideways on one foot, sacrificing your balance, and throw your opponent in the direction of your foot. Around 1883, when the Nage no Kata form of the throw was established, the technique was performed starting with grappling in the self-defense posture. This is Ukiwaza, performed by pulling the opponent forward. This Ukiwaza is performed by stepping in with your right foot when your opponent withdraws his left foot. At times, you might assume an oblique defensive posture after pulling your opponent forward by grasping his rear collar and a sleeve and throw from a self-sacrificing posture. This is a technique of following on from Kataguruma to Ukiwaza. In this technique, as you're sacrificing yourself in making the throw, it is not Kataguruma. Yoko Otoshi. In Yoko Otoshi, you step to one side and throw your opponent directly to one side in a sacrificing motion. Observe the off-balancing to the side and sacrificing motion. Pull your opponent to one side, make him go off balance, then throw, sacrificing yourself. As you can see, in a Yoko Otoshi, off-balancing and throwing are done to the side. Tani Otoshi. In Tani Otoshi, you step behind both legs of your opponent in a sacrificing motion, then throw him down directly behind. If you can push his elbow up, it becomes even more easy to make him go off balance and fall backwards. Here, Kuchiki Daoshi is transformed into Tani Otoshi. On occasions when Kuchiki Daoshi cannot be executed, you might step in, throwing in a self-sacrificing motion. This also is a kind of Tani Otoshi. Here you hold your opponent's right arm under your left arm. You perform Tani Otoshi, sacrificing yourself. Let's look at these three similar techniques. In Ukiwaza, you make your opponent lose his balance forward. He's thrown in that direction. In Yoko Otoshi, you make your opponent lose his balance to the side. He's thrown in that direction. In Tani Otoshi, you make your opponent lose his balance backward, and he's thrown in that direction. Yoko Wakare. In Yoko Wakare, you step in with both of your feet next to your opponent's feet, then throw him over your body, sacrificing yourself. The moment your opponent's feet are together, sacrifice yourself and throw him above your body. Here the opponent's Ogoshi is transformed into a Yoko Wakare. As soon as your opponent attacks with Ogoshi, you open sideways and turn it into a Yoko Wakare. Transforming your opponent's Deashi Harai. When your opponent attacks with Deashi Harai, step up close and sacrificing yourself, throw sideways with a Yoko Wakare. Yoko Wakare can also be performed as Katame Waza on the floor. Yoko Gake. When practicing the kata, destroy your opponent's balance in about 2.5 steps, then throw, sacrificing yourself. In this technique, it's important to make your opponent go off balance till he's supported only by his toes. You sweep, thrusting powerfully with your sole just underneath your opponent's ankle from the front, then sacrificing yourself, throw him parallel to your body. Because Yokogake is extremely difficult to set up, it's hardly ever used in randori. You sometimes see it used in conjunction with Sasae Tsurikomiyashi in practice. The opponent falls after being thrown in a large whirl. This too is an application of Yokogake. Daki Wakare. In fighting on the mat, if your opponent does not get up, you can raise and hold him up from the side, then twisting, throw over your body. It appears that in the early days of judo, the effect of this technique was allowed even if you were on a mat. However, under the present system of judging, the effect of the throw is no longer recognized. Here, standing fight becomes dakiwakare. When your opponent attacks with an uchimata, you might try catching him from the rear to apply another technique. Then, when he lets down both of his hands and escapes, you can apply dakiwakare. The effect of the technique is recognized in this case. Yokoguruma. If you try throwing your opponent with an uranage as he comes at you, he defends himself by twisting. Put your right foot between both his feet at that moment and throw, sacrificing yourself. Here, the opponent's hanegoshi is turned into this technique. Here's the way to apply it, following on from taneotoshi. The moment your opponent bends forward to defend himself against taneotoshi, then you follow with this. Soto makikomi. In soto makikomi, hold your opponent's arm under your arm. Step in close with your hips, then turning, throw him over your body in a wrapping motion. Place your hip close to the opponent to use as an axis in the throw. This is the basic principle of soto makikomi. Placing your hip next to your opponent, but not so deep, and throwing him. This is also soto makikomi. Here's soto makikomi, where you first step in with your feet. You can also step sideways in a large motion outside your opponent's right foot to wrap him around. Uchimakikomi. Uchimakikomi is similar to Ippon Seoi Nage. Grasp your opponent by the arm and twist sideways to wrap him around you. Use your hip as an axis, twist and throw in a wrapping motion. This is the basis of Uchimakikomi. Here's Uchimakikomi, where you step out on your right foot to set it up. Here's Uchimakikomi after you've made your opponent retreat. Here you follow on from Ippon Seoi Nage. The moment your opponent defends himself by turning away, you grasp his neck with an arm and pull, wrapping him around you. We distinguish between Seoi Nage and Uchimakikomi by whether you carried your opponent on your shoulder or simply wrapped him around you as you controlled his arm. Hane Makikomi. In Hane Makikomi, you throw in a wrapping motion as you lift your opponent up with Hanegoshi. There are two methods of executing this throw. The first is to lift up your opponent and wrap him around you as you grasp him by the arm. The second method is to lift your opponent up with Hanegoshi, then wrap him around you. There's a difference in the timing of when you take hold of your opponent's arm. In this case, the opponent's collar has simply been grasped and he's not been wrapped around. This is Hanegoshi, not Hane Makikomi. Harai Makikomi. In Harai Makikomi, you lift your opponent up using Harai Goshi, then throw, wrapping him around you. There are two ways to throw. In the first method, lift up your opponent and wrap him around you as you grasp him by the arm like this. Another method is to lift your opponent up with Harai Goshi, then place his arm under yours to wrap him around you. There's a difference in the timing of when you grasp your opponent's arm. Again, in this case, the opponent's collar has simply been grasped and he's not been wrapped around. This is Harai Goshi, not Harai Makikomi.
And now for a spectacular Harai Makikomi.
Uchimata Makikomi. In Uchimata Makikomi, you lift your opponent up using Uchimata, then throw, wrapping him around you. There are two ways to make the throw. The first is to lift up your opponent and wrap him around you as you grasp him by the arm. The second method is to lift your opponent up with Uchimata, then wrap him around you and throw. Please observe carefully the timing of grasping the opponent's arm under yours. All Soto Makikomi. Osoto Makikomi starts with one of the Osoto Gari family of techniques, followed by either an outer or inner wraparound throw. In the first case, following your opponent's defense of an Osoto Gari, you throw by wrapping him around you in an outward direction. From an Osoto Gari, you lean on your opponent and throw him, wrapping him outwards. The final technique used is Soto Makikomi, but as it follows Osoto Gari, the throw is called Osoto Makikomi. Kani Basami. Kani Basami is a technique of throwing where you sandwich your opponent's body using both your feet. As soon as your feet are on a line with your opponent's, sandwich his abdomen and legs between your legs and throw in a sacrificing movement.
According to the rules of Kodokan Judo, Kani Basami may be allowed with due regard to the level and scale of competition. Under IJF rules, however, Kani Basami has been a prohibited act since 1991 and will result in hansokumake if applied. Kawazunake. Since the technique involves falling together with your opponent, it's often dangerous and is therefore prohibited in a tournament. Quite often, it's difficult to judge the name of the Nage Waza being applied. With more research and development, new techniques may well emerge. However, the name will be chosen from one of the 67 throws, depending on the principle behind the technique used. We hope this video will help you understand the classifications and names of the Nage Waza techniques, as well as the basic principles of Judo. Breaking the balance of one's opponent to apply a technique, and using his momentum to throw him.
Katame Waza are generally known as Newaza and consist of Osai Komi Waza, Shime Waza and Kansetsu Waza. Nage Waza and Katame Waza are like the two sides of a coin, and to improve your judo it's important to practice both. Katame Waza can be combined with Nage Waza to carry out a continuous attack. The possibilities are limitless, and so are the possibilities for continuing on from an Osai Komiwaza to a Shimewaza or Kansetsu Waza, or from a Shimewaza to a Kansetsu Waza. By mastering Katame Waza, you'll achieve a whole new dimension in Judo. The highly sophisticated techniques involved in Kodokan Judo Katame Waza have an inner strength that will help improve all your techniques. Let's start by looking at the 29 basic techniques and variations in Katame Waza. The 7 Osai Komiwaza techniques are often used in competition. There are 12 Shimewaza techniques. Okuri Erijime is often used in competition, but Dojime is prohibited in randori and competition. The application of a Kansetsu Waza will help you win instantaneously. However, the Ashigarami technique is not allowed in randori or in competition. The objective of Osai Komiwaza is to get an unbroken hold on your opponent that he can't get out of within a fixed time limit. Hold him down on his back, facing him as you do so, and make sure he's unable to grip or seize your trunk or legs with his legs. This is how to apply a Kesagatame from the right. Clamp your opponent's right arm in your left armpit and put your right arm around his neck. Extend your right leg forward and your left leg backward and use your body to apply pressure and hold him down. The term Kesagatame includes all related techniques. Let's look at some of the variations on Kesagatame. Clasping your hands together will help tighten your hold. If your opponent attempts to twist and free himself, restrain him by extending your left leg forward. And press your right knee firmly against his body. Use your right arm to hold down your opponent's upper arm and shoulder. Make sure to press down with your body and not just use your arm. When holding down your opponent's shoulder with your right arm, you may also bring your leg up towards you to respond to his movements. Keep your chest firmly pressed against his body. Let's see how Yasuhiro Yamashita applies a Kesagatame from an Ouchigari. Notice how he restrains his opponent's arm by pulling with his right. Here you'll see Kenji Osuki applying a Soto Makikomi from the right. He traps his opponent's arm firmly under his left arm. Kuzure Kesagatame is a modification of Kesagatame. Slip your right arm under your opponent's left armpit and grip his collar. Let's take another look at this. When gripping your opponent's left lapel with your right arm, it's important to keep his body firmly pressed against yours. This is a variation in which you grasp your opponent's lapel near the back of his neck and hold him down, balancing yourself with your right hand and legs. Slip your left arm right under his neck so that you can firmly grasp and pull at his lapel. Place your right hand on the tatami to maintain balance. This variation involves trapping your opponent's right arm between your legs. Reach around his right elbow and apply a scissor hold with your legs. Tuck your right leg firmly under your opponent's head as if it were a pillow or makura, and secure your hold by gripping your right knee with your right hand. And here's what used to be called Ushiro Kesagatame. You can also slip your right hand underneath his right shoulder to apply an arm lock. This technique is often used to lead into Kuzure Kesagatame. The important thing is to trap his arm firmly in your armpit. In this variation, you use both hands to trap your opponent's arm. This is also a Kuzure Kesagatame. Bear down on his arm and upper body. Let's watch a Kuzure Kesagatame performed by Ingrid Bergmans of Belgium. As soon as she breaks her opponent's balance, she goes straight into the hold. She has a firm grip on her opponent's lapel and draws her arm tightly around. Taking full advantage of their weight difference, she gains full control over her opponent. Here we have Raskan of Germany going from an Ogoshi to a Kuzure Kesagatame. He maintains a tight grip on his opponent's sleeve to trap his arm. Van Barneveld of Belgium crushes his opponent's Seoi Nage and applies a Kuzure Kesagatame. He maintains his hold by pulling his opponent's collar firmly towards him with his left hand. And now let's watch Jun Kono execute a Kuzure Kesagatame at the All Japan Judo Championships. Grabbing his opponent's right arm with both hands, he executes a throw and goes straight into the hold, making sure to keep his opponent's arm tightly under his armpit. The kata gatame is a hold executed by pressing your right knee firmly against your opponent's right hip, bearing down with your head and neck to clasp both hands around his neck and arm. Clasp your hands, palms crossed, and draw your elbows to your side to tighten your hold. Make sure to keep the balls of your feet on the mat. It's important to maintain your balance while controlling your opponent. You can either bring your knees up or spread your legs out wide in response to your opponent's movements. If necessary, you can also place your hands on the mat to maintain your balance. The important thing is to keep your opponent under control. Let's take a look at the basic Kami Shiho Gatame. Slip your hands under your opponent's arms and grab his belt on both sides, thumbs on top. Draw your elbows to your side to tighten your hold and press down with the area of your chest. Keep your hips low, draw your elbows to your side and bear down with your body to secure your hold. You can also stretch your legs out. Or if your opponent attempts to arch his back, you can raise your hips and shift your weight forward. You could also cross your legs in the kuzure kesagatame fashion. The important thing is to shift your hips and legs to maintain your control. Instead of slipping your hands under his arms, you can reach over and grab his belt to restrain his upper body. In this variation, your opponent is lying face down. Reach under and grab both sides of his collar, flip him over and hold him down. Use your opponent's resistance to flip him over and quickly change the position of your legs and hips so you can bear down on his upper body. Be sure not to loosen your hold on his collar and maintain your balance to prevent him from restraining your hands. And here's how to go from a yoko sankaku jime, where you lock your opponent's neck and arm with your legs from the side, to a kami shiho gatame. When you turn your opponent over to the side in the yoko sankaku position, he may attempt to escape by rolling over in that direction. You must therefore move quickly to face him and hold him down. Let's watch the 1987 All-Japan champion Yoshimi Masaki apply a kami shiho gatame. Sweeping his opponent with a harai tsurikomiashi, he goes straight into the kami shiho gatame. An impressive performance, making full use of his weight. Yoko Tanabe was the bronze medalist in the Belgrade World Championships. She chokes her opponent with her left hand and continues with a kami shiho gatame.
そのまま抑え込み上四方に入った抑え込みに入りました田辺。残り時間が1分55秒あります。
今締めからですね、相手を返して抑え込みに入りました。
非常にうまいタイミングで入りました。まもなく10秒。
From a position diagonally to the right of your opponent's head, pass your right hand over his right shoulder and around his arm and trap his arm in your armpit while your left hand grabs the side of his belt. Apply pressure with the area of your chest to hold him down. Here's how you grab the back of your opponent's collar. Lower your hips and bear down, making sure that he can't free his right arm. Here's how you grab your opponent's belt with your hands crossed. Crossing your hands enables you to strengthen your hold, making it difficult for your opponent to free himself. You can also restrain his arm by half wrapping the bottom of his jacket over his wrist. Firmly secure his arm with the bottom of his jacket. Here, your opponent is on all fours. Approach him from the front and roll him over to apply a kata hajime and hold him down. The important thing is to roll over and go into the hold from a kata hajime. Your opponent is on all fours. Get behind him and roll him over to hold him down. Notice the use of both hands. Grip your opponent's collar with one hand and slip the other hand over his shoulder and under his arm to trap the arm and hold him down. If your opponent manages to seize your legs with his legs, the hold becomes nullified or broken. To prevent this from happening, it's important to make the most of your hands, extending your arms to block his legs. Your opponent is on all fours. Break his balance and apply a yoko sankaku jime. Maintaining this lock, shift your body to face him and hold him down. Pay special attention to the use of your left hand after coming face to face with your opponent. You lock your opponent's neck and arm by forming a triangle with your legs. This is one way to restrain your opponent's arm. Let's watch Olympic champion Hitoshi Saito apply a Kuzure Kami Shiho Gatame. He pushes his opponent's neck with his right hand and grabs the bottom of his opponent's collar to flip him over. He maintains his balance while holding his opponent down. Kinjiro Mototani is famous for his newaza. Let's watch his Kuzure Kami Shiho Gatame. He maintains a strong grip with his right hand and responds well to his opponent's movements. And now a match in the 48-kilogram category from the Belgrade World Championships. Let's watch Karen Briggs of Britain apply a Kamishiho Gatame on Japan's Esaki. Notice how Esaki's right hand has already been tied down with her obi. Having restrained Esaki's right wrist, Briggs continues to restrain Esaki's right shoulder and holds her down. And now for Yoko Shiho Gatame. Your opponent is lying on his back. Approach him from his right side and with your right hand reach around his left thigh and grab the side of his belt. Slide your left hand under his neck and grab the side of his collar. Press down with your chest to hold him down. In response to your opponent's movements, you can release your right hand from his belt and put your arm around his body to restrain him with your upper body. Let's look at this in slow motion. Your right hand is used to check your opponent's movements and maintain balance. After putting your right arm around your opponent's body, you can grab hold of your own collar to restrain his neck. At the same time, if you grab hold of his inner right thigh, you can stop him from moving his hips and legs freely. Let's take another look at how the collar is held and how the right hand is used. If your opponent attempts to twist and escape by slipping his left arm underneath your chest, bear down on him, arm and all, to keep him under control. The important thing here is to use your right elbow effectively. Placing your right hand on the mat helps to control your opponent's movements and maintain your balance. You can restrain your opponent's arm by wrapping the bottom of his jacket halfway round his wrist. Another way of controlling his arm is to apply a te-gatame or hand-arm lock. Place your right hand on the mat for balance. Let's watch Hitoshi Saito apply a Yoko Shihogatame from a Tai Otoshi. He has full control over his opponent's left arm and shoulder and uses his weight to hold him down. And now for a Yoko Shihogatame by world champion Naoya Ogawa. He grabs the back of his opponent's collar, locks his opponent's left arm between his legs and bears down with his body. And now for Tate Shihogatame. Sitting astride your opponent's chest, wrap your arms around his neck and arm to trap him between your neck and hands. Lock your legs around his hips and pin him down with the area of your chest. In this variation, wrap your arms around his arms and control his upper body to apply the hold. As soon as you get your arms around him, shift your weight onto his arms. You can also control him by pressing down with your head and neck, as in katagatame. Another way of restraining him is to twist your arm around his neck and grab your own belt to trap his neck. Watch how the arm goes around the neck to grab the belt and how the legs are positioned. Reaching over your opponent's shoulder, you grab the back of his belt to go from a Yoko Shihogatame to a Tate Shihogatame. The important thing is to react quickly and straddle your opponent to make the transition to Tate Shihogatame. And this is what to do to control mainly the right arm. Grab your opponent's right arm with your left hand and bring your right arm around his elbow as in Ude Hishigi Ude Gatame. Grab your own collar to tighten the hold. Your left hand is placed on the mat for balance. Let's take a look at this from a different angle. Trap your opponent's shoulders and torso with your legs to keep him under control. If you decide to restrain his upper body in the katakatame style, you can bring your right arm around his neck and grab the left side of your collar to tighten the hold. When going from a yoko shiho with your right hand grabbing your opponent's belt to a tate shiho gatame, your left hand plays a vital role. Notice the use of the left hand. Your opponent is on all fours. Approaching him from behind, grab both sides of his collar to turn him over and hold him down. Straddle him as soon as you turn him over. Make sure that one hand remains on his collar throughout the hold. Katsuhiko Kashiwazaki, the 1981 world champion, excels in Newaza. Let's watch him apply a tate shiho gatame.
この足技から寝技に持ち込む連携が上村さんうまいんですね。うまいですね。卒がないですね。はい。縦四方に持ち込みます。
He restrains his opponent's right shoulder and maintains his balance with his head.
逃れることはできそうもありませんね。完全に抑え込みに入りました。まだ試合が始まって40秒ぐらいのところです。縦四方固め30秒で1本になります。
And here's Kashiwazaki applying a tate shiho gatame in another match. Take special note of how he controls his opponent's right shoulder and his timing in disengaging his leg.
どうですかこの攻めは。
いいんじゃないですか。これから足抜いて、
これから足を抜いて横四方に移ろうというところですね。縦四方に入りました。縦四方固め。館内からも拍手が起こります。寝技の柏崎。抑え込みに入りました。30秒で1本になります。先ほども縦四方固め。今度も縦四方固め。
Kashiwazaki is very good at going from a hikkomi gaishi to an osai komi. He's having difficulty restraining his opponent's upper body because he can't get a grip on his belt. That's why he uses both legs to control the movement of his opponent's lower body.
逃げようとするのが3棒。セネガルの選手です。 まもなく20秒過ぎました。あと10秒です。
And now a match from the 1983 World Championships. Let's watch the bronze medalist in the 86 kilogram division, Seiki Nose, execute a tate shiho gatame. After getting control of his opponent's right shoulder, he keeps his balance with his forehead and right hand.
まもなく20秒、あと10秒です。完全に立ち方、抑え込みに入りました。
Let's look at some examples of how to go from a Nage Waza to an Osai Komi Waza. Deashi Harai to Kesagatame. Ouchigari to Yoko Shiho Gatame. Osotogari to Honkesa Gatame. Harai Makikomi to Kuzure Kesa Gatame. Seoi Nage to Kuzure Kami Shiho Gatame. In Shime Waza, you use your hands, legs, arms or lapels to choke the opponent, applying pressure to his trachea or carotid arteries. A skillfully executed Shime Waza will lead to instant victory. The following techniques are forbidden in competition: applying a choke lock to a part of the body other than the neck, strangulation with the legs, strangulation using the end of the belt or bottom of the jacket, strangulation with fists or fingers. In Nami Juji Jime, you cross your wrists and grip your opponent's collar with both hands with your thumbs inside the collar and choke him by applying pressure to the side of his neck. When crossing your wrists, the back of your hand should be facing upward. The main point in Nami Juji Jime is to choke your opponent by drawing your hands tightly together. When attempting this technique from beneath your opponent, make sure to pull tightly with your arms to prevent him from pulling you up. Reach around his head and grab the side of his collar with your right hand and pull immediately. And here's how to apply a Nami Juji Jime from behind. When applying the technique from behind and under, it's important to restrain your opponent's lower body with your legs to prevent him from pulling you up. In Gyaku Juji Jime, cross your wrists and grab both sides of your opponent's collar using a reverse grip with the thumbs outside and the fingers inside the collar. Choke him by applying pressure to the side of his neck. Let's watch the action again. Grab the collar so that your palms are facing upwards and choke him right away. Here's how to apply a Gyaku Juji Jime when you're on your back. Use your legs to control your opponent's lower body, the hips and legs, to prevent him from pulling you up. In Kata Juji Jime, you cross your wrists and grab both sides of your opponent's collar to choke him by applying pressure to his neck. What makes it different from Nami Juji Jime and Gyaku Juji Jime is that the palms of both hands are facing each other. Lean forward and pull him towards you while applying the choke. Here's how to apply the stranglehold while trapping your opponent's arm in your armpit. Here's how to escape your opponent's Kuzure Kesagatame by turning him over on his back, following with a stranglehold. Grab the back of his collar with one hand, while the other hand grips the front. Push him back and apply the stranglehold. Here's how to enter into a stranglehold from a standing position facing your opponent. The technique is similar to throwing him over your shoulder. Notice how the right hand grips the collar. The difference in the 3 Juji-jime holds lies in the way you grip your opponent's collar. In Nami Juji-jime, the thumbs of both hands are inside the collar. In Gyaku Juji-jime, the palms are turned up with the fingers inside the collar. In Kata Juji-jime, you cross your wrists so that both palms are facing each other. One hand grabs the opponent's collar with the thumb inside and fingers out, while the other hand does the reverse. Hadaka-jime is a stranglehold applied with both arms without holding the judogi. Clasp your hands together, palms crossed, and pull your opponent towards you, throwing him off balance as you tighten your arms around his neck. You can also lock your arms together to apply the hold. When your opponent is on all fours, turn him over to apply the stranglehold. This is how to apply the stranglehold while facing your opponent on all fours. Be careful of how you clasp your hands and use your upper body to tighten the pressure around his neck. Here's how to apply a stranglehold to an opponent who's attempting to pin you down on your back with a kami shiho gatame. The main point here is the use of your right arm and legs. Once again, take note of how the arm and legs are locked together. This is a variation of Hadaka-jime. Here's the model form or kata of okuri eri-jime. Reach under your opponent's left armpit with your left hand and pull his left lapel down. Reach around his neck with your right hand and grab high up on his left lapel while your left hand grabs the opposite lapel. Apply the choke by drawing your right arm around his neck while pulling down with your left. Here's how to apply the choke from behind an opponent who's on all fours. And this is a demonstration of how to approach from the side when your opponent is on all fours. By bringing your legs around, you can bear down with your upper body to restrain his movements. Use your right arm to prevent him from moving forward and apply the choke. This is a very effective technique since you're holding him in place with your right elbow while applying the choke. Approach your opponent who's on all fours from the front, roll over and apply the stranglehold. Be sure to grab his collar so that your hold around his neck tightens as you roll over. When facing your opponent, put your left arm around his neck to restrain him and apply the stranglehold. Take note of the left hand and the use of the right leg in turning the opponent over. Instead of rolling over sideways, you can also roll backwards. When rolling backwards, make full use of your legs and be sure to maintain contact with your opponent's body. This is a stranglehold which used to be called Jigoku Jime. Lock your legs around one of your opponent's arms and pull him down on his back to restrain him, and draw your left arm around his neck. Lock his arm between your legs and roll forward to apply the stranglehold. Roll forward on your own accord as soon as you lock your legs around his arm. Besides applying pressure with both hands, you can also use your leg to make the stranglehold more effective. Drawing your leg across his face is against the rules. Let's take another look at the action. This is a variation in which you lock your legs around your opponent's arm and roll forward to go into the stranglehold, placing one leg around his neck. Let's watch several matches in which Yasuhiro Yamashita performs Okuri Eri Jime. The final of the 1981 World Championships, he applies a stranglehold to Rejko of Poland from a Kosotogake. Yamashita says he was able to execute an effective hold because he grabbed high up on his opponent's lapel with his right hand, while his left hand pulled hard at the right lapel. And now the 1983 Moscow World Championships. Watch Yamashita's right hand. He has a firm grip on his opponent's collar while he restrains his opponent's wrist with his left hand. By doing so, he succeeds in applying the hold right away. Here, Yamashita avoids his opponent's seoi nage and goes straight into an okuri eri jime. Notice his timing and moves. His left hand was decisive in applying the hold. He managed to pull tightly at his opponent's collar all the way through. Grip your opponent's left lapel with your right hand, as in okuri eri jime. Slide your left hand under his left armpit and control his left arm by pushing it up. Then apply your left arm at the nape of his neck to execute the stranglehold. Pushing his left arm up from below the elbow makes it difficult for him to resist and makes it easier for you to apply the hold. When your opponent is on all fours, approach him from behind and roll over to execute the hold. Let's take a look at this in slow motion. And here's how to approach your opponent from the front to apply kata hajime. For kata tejime, hold your opponent down on his back, grasp his collar from the side with one hand using a grip with the thumb inside and apply pressure to his throat. While grasping his collar with one hand, grip the side of his belt with the other and lean forward to tighten the hold. This is an example of using katate jime when your opponent is on all fours. Approach from the front and use your right hand. Or you may choose to use your left hand. Pull him close towards you and apply pressure to his throat. The important thing is to restrain his upper body with the inside of your right knee to stop him from rolling over and escaping. For ryote jime, grasp your opponent's collar with both hands with the thumbs inside and apply pressure to his neck with your fists. This is a ryote jime applied from a standing position. In order to apply the choke, pull down and twist your fists inwards. And this is how to apply the choke when you're on your back. The main point is to lock his neck between your legs to keep him from pulling you up. This also makes it easier for you to use your hands. This is a sode guruma jime applied from under. This involves grasping the sleeves of your jacket with both hands to trap your opponent's head between your arms. Let's take another look at the action. This is how to apply the technique from above. The important thing is to bear down with your body and pull him towards you as you apply pressure with your arms. This is how to apply the hold from behind. This is a sode guruma jime applied from below. Notice that both arms move at the same time. Pull his head towards you. As soon as he resists and raises his head, slip your left hand under his chin and apply the hold. To apply tsukomi jime, grip your opponent's collar from the front and apply pressure to the neck with your hands. Grasping his left collar with your right hand, bring it underneath his right collar. You can also use a grip with the fingers inside and bring your right hand over or under his right collar to apply the hold. And now for a variation commonly known as necktie jime. Clutch both collars at the bottom of his neck with your right hand, while the left hand grips the right collar and pulls down. Sankaku jime is a strangling technique in which you lock your legs around your opponent's neck and under his arm to form a triangle and apply pressure to the neck. When applying this technique from behind, the use of your legs is important, especially the heel of the leg on top. Twisting the heel outwards like this allows you to squeeze more tightly with your left leg. When your opponent is attempting a yoko shiho gatame, you can apply sankaku jime from under. Quickly bring your left leg around his neck and apply pressure by forming a triangle with your legs. Here's how to apply the technique when your opponent is on all fours. Once you wrap your legs around him in a triangle, roll over and quickly raise yourself so that your body is facing him. This will prevent him from escaping the hold. Take note of how the legs form a triangle around his neck. You can also apply pressure to the neck without raising your body. To make the hold more effective, your legs should form a flattened triangle. The use of dojime is prohibited in randori and in competition. When your opponent attacks from below, wrap your legs around his waist and lock your ankles together. Pull him towards you with both hands and apply the choke with your legs. When your opponent is on all fours, roll him over to apply the choke. Kansetsu Waza involve using your hands, arms or legs to twist, stretch or bend your opponent's joints. In competition, you may only apply Kansetsu Waza to your opponent's elbow joints. Ude garami is a technique in which you use your arms to twist your opponent's arm backwards in either direction at the elbow. When your opponent thrusts his arm out, grab his wrist and twist his arm backwards. His upper arm should be at a right angle with his body, and his forearm should also be bent 90 degrees. This is an example of how to twist your opponent's forearm inside. The elbow should be bent to form a right angle. This shows how to apply an arm lock by stretching his elbow. Enter into a tate shiho gatame and apply an arm lock by stretching his elbow. Place your left arm underneath your opponent's elbow, using it as a fulcrum to stretch his elbow. This is how to lock your opponent's arm when he attempts to hold you down. One way of doing this is to take his forearm and twist it behind his back. The other way is to take his forearm from below and push it up over his shoulder. Use your right leg to stop your opponent from rolling over and escaping. This shows how to control your opponent's forearm by stretching the elbow. This is an arm lock applied by bending the elbow. Here's how to apply ude garami from a standing position. Just before grappling with your opponent, take his arm and bend it backwards as you force him down. If your opponent raises his arm, take the opportunity of this to force it up and lock his elbow joint, throwing him down as in Osoto Otoshi. Let's watch Hideyuki Sekine apply udegarami. His opponent has managed to lock his legs around Sekine's. To avoid this attempt at osai komi, Sekine slips his left wrist under his opponent's elbow and uses it as a fulcrum to stretch his elbow and apply udegarami. Ude Hishigi Juji Gatame is an elbow lock achieved by taking your opponent's wrist and trapping his forearm between your thighs to stretch it back. Bend one knee and place it over your opponent's neck to restrain him. Place the tip of the other leg against his back near his armpit and press with your hips as you stretch his arm. Stretch his arm fully so that he can't bend, or stretch his elbow and tighten your knees to trap the arm between your thighs. The lock will be easier to apply if you take your opponent's wrist so that the thumb is turned upwards. This shows how to restrain his neck. And now going on from a Yoko Shiho Gatame. After taking his arm with both hands, you may need to let go of one hand so that you can control his legs, depending on his movements. This shows how to apply the lock on your opponent as he attempts to rise. Stretch your hips to prevent him from getting up and apply the lock. Here's what to do if your opponent attempts to lift you up. Take advantage of his action to stop him from standing and use your left leg to force him down so that you can apply the lock. This is how to apply the lock when your opponent is kneeling between your legs. The thing to remember here is to place one leg on the mat and turn your body around so that it forms a cross with your opponent's. And this is what to do when your opponent attempts a seoi nage from a low position. Step over whichever arm your opponent uses to pull you and stretch it to apply the lock. This is how to attack an opponent who's on all fours. The main points are to lock your legs around your opponent's neck and grab hold of the tip of his foot so that you can throw him on his back. This is a match from the 1981 World Championships in the Netherlands. The final in the 78 kilogram division is between Adams of Britain and Japan's Kase. Let's watch Adams go from a seoi nage to a juji gatame, a technique he excels in. He attempts to apply the lock by turning Kase on his back. Failing, he makes Kase roll forward and succeeds in applying juji gatame.
十字固めに行くのがアダムス、捉えるカセは帰らなダメですね。帰らな、そのままで捉えますよ。体を返すことですね。はい、返さなダメです。このままでは。このままではカセ。
This shows that you have to react according to your opponent's movements.
十字固め敗れました。カセ敗れました。アダムスの優勝です。
Los Angeles Olympic champion Matsuoka applies a seoi nage followed by a juji gatame. Although his seoi nage was successful, he went on to apply a Katame Waza, showing his remarkable spirit. The 1991 world champion Tadanori Koshino performs a tomoe nage followed by an ude hishigi juji gatame. This is a good example of how a Katame Waza is used to deal the final blow. Here's Koshino again, attacking his opponent with a combination of osai komi and juji gatame.
さあもう少し2分半半分過ぎました。あ、10時取りましたですね。10時固めに行った。あ、一本ですね。あ、参った参った参った。カテドラ参った。
From the 1991 World Championships, here's the final match in the 95 kilogram and over category. Kozorotov of Russia demonstrates a well-executed ude hishigi juji gatame.
残り時間が1分20秒。モレノ・ガルシアが下になりました。あーっと決まった。ところと十字固めでこの10秒級優勝です。
In ude hishigi ude gatame, you pull your opponent's wrist and lodge it between your neck and shoulder so that the arm is stretched and twisted, and then press down with both hands on the elbow. This is how to apply the technique when your opponent attacks from the feet. Use your legs to defend yourself and apply pressure on his elbow. You can also assume a more aggressive approach, using your elbows to restrain his arm. Let's take a closer look. Wrap your arms around your opponent's arm and trap it between your neck and shoulder. You can also apply the lock by twisting his elbow and pressing it against your chest. This shows how to restrain your opponent's surite or lifting arm just before grappling. When your opponent attempts to grab the back of your collar, seize the moment to trap his arm between your neck and shoulder. In order to restrain your opponent's hikite or pulling arm, wrap your arms around his upper arm and press down. Let's take a closer look at that action. Here's how to apply the lock from a yoko shiho gatame. The point is to place your entire weight on your opponent's arm. Let's watch Naoya Ogawa apply an ude gatame. Failing to execute a kesa gatame, he modified the hold to an ude gatame. Ude hishigi hiza gatame is an arm lock applied by trapping the wrist in your armpit or holding it with one hand, pressing down on the elbow with your knee to twist and stretch the arm. Besides using your knee, you must also press the tip of your foot against your opponent's hips and control him with your lower body. The tip of your foot should be on his belt. This is a close-up of the arm lock. This is how to apply the arm lock from a hon kesa gatame. Place the arm you're holding across your inner thigh and use the knee of the other leg to apply pressure on the elbow. When your opponent attacks you from the feet, pull him down and apply the arm lock. The method is the same as in suriage, a technique in kimi no kata. The main feature of this technique is that you rest your entire weight on your opponent's elbow. When your opponent attempts to raise your legs, utilize his force to apply the arm lock. To do this, grab his wrist to prevent him from getting away and hook your foot under his knee, using your leg as a lever to apply pressure on his arm. In this variation, you apply leverage on your opponent's arm to bend it backwards, using his elbow as the fulcrum. Twist your body to the side as you apply pressure to his elbow with your leg. Let's take another look at this. You can also sit up and apply pressure to the elbow with your knee. Sit up and control your opponent's wrist using your weight to bear down on his arm. To perform ude hishigi waki gatame, use both hands to get a grip on one of your opponent's wrists from the side and trap his arm in your armpit. Stretch the arm out while twisting it backwards at the elbow. This is how to apply the technique from a standing position. Speed is important. Apply the lock as soon as you get a hold on his wrist. It is a penalty to throw yourself on the mat. Here's how to apply the lock from a kuzure kami shiho gatame. Grab your opponent's arm, taking advantage of his attempt to escape, and apply pressure with your entire weight. This is how to execute the lock from a kuzure kami shiho gatame, combining the arm lock with a stranglehold. After trapping his arm in your armpit, wrap your leg around his waist to restrain him. The final match in the 1985 World Championships in Seoul for the 95 kg and over division, Hitoshi Saito of Japan meets South Korea's Cho Young-chul. Soon after the start of the match, Cho applies a waki gatame, which causes Saito to dislocate his left elbow, forcing him to withdraw. The referees had to consult as to whether Cho's action was against the rules. Saito applies an uchimata to break his opponent's balance. He then immediately continues his attack by applying a kansetsu waza to his opponent's right arm. And now for a look at an ude hishigi waki gatame that will be given a penalty. If you throw yourself down on the floor from a standing position while applying a technique such as ude hishigi waki gatame, you will lose by a penalty. In ude hishigi haragatame, you grip one of your opponent's wrists from the side, using either hand, and use your stomach to apply pressure to his elbow. Lock the elbow by straightening, twisting or bending the arm. To apply the lock in the manner of kime no kata, stretch his arm out and lock the elbow as soon as you get a grip on his wrist. To apply the lock from a kuzure kesagatame, stretch your opponent's arm and bear down with your stomach. This shows how to lock the elbow by bending the arm and pressing down with your stomach. Let's take another look at this. This is a haragatame applied from a yoko shiho gatame. Twist your opponent's left arm and pull it forward. Apply pressure to the shoulder and elbow with your stomach. This technique can be applied to your opponent when he's face down. Catch his forearm with one leg and straighten out or twist the arm to lock the elbow. The right leg is used in this demonstration. And now the left leg. Catch his forearm in a quick movement and control his arm. Applying a stranglehold while doing so will help make the lock even more effective. From a kuzure kesagatame, you can also lock the elbow by catching his arm in between your thighs. The moment you see him stretching his arm, seize the opportunity to trap it between your thighs. Ashigatame is one of Hitoshi Saito's favorite techniques. Here he secures his opponent's wrist with his right leg and applies pressure on the elbow with his left leg. The World Championships in Seoul, Saito against Cohen of the United States. He secures his opponent's elbow with his left leg and raises his right to lock the elbow. Saito faces Kotsman of Czechoslovakia. He enters into Ashigatame with his right leg. As Kotsman attempts to free his arm, Saito uses his left leg to fortify his hold and lock the elbow. To apply ude hishigi tegatame from a standing position, slip your left hand through his right armpit and grasp his left collar. Take hold of his wrist with your right hand and flip him over, twisting his arm behind his back to lock the elbow. Grasping his wrist, throw yourself down so that your opponent is forced to roll over. When your opponent is lying on his back, grab both legs and bring them over his head to restrain him. Grab his right arm with your right hand and apply pressure to the arm with your right knee. Shift your weight to lock the elbow. You can also apply the lock from a yoko shiho gatame by grabbing one of your opponent's wrists to twist the arm. Make sure to stop him from lying flat on his face by trapping his body between your legs so that you can keep him under control. Another way to apply tegatame to an opponent who's on his back is to attack from the legs. Remember to restrain his legs as fast as you can, then grab the wrist and use your body weight to bear down and lock the elbow. Wrap one leg over your opponent's shoulder and the other under the opposite armpit to trap his arm, as in sankaku gatame. This can be done from the front, the side or the rear. Straighten out or twist his arm to lock his elbow. Take advantage of your opponent's efforts to draw you up to wrap your legs around him in the Sankaku Gatame style. Straddle your opponent, who is on all fours, and wrap your legs around him in the Sankaku Gatame style. Throw yourself forward, forcing him to roll over and stretch his arm to lock the elbow. This is how to apply the lock from a Yoko Sankaku Jime. After trapping your opponent's arm with a Yoko Sankaku Jime, you can also lock the elbow of the other arm in this manner. After trapping your opponent's right arm with a Yoko Sankaku Jime, you can apply the lock by bending the arm backwards. Bend the arm back so that the elbow forms a right angle. Ashi-garami is a dangerous technique and is not allowed in randori or in competition. Force your opponent's legs apart with one leg and hook your other leg around one of them from behind to lock the knee. This video was produced to give you an understanding of the basic techniques and variations which make up the Katame Waza of Kodokan Judo. Consisting of holding, neck lock and arm lock techniques, Katame Waza are neither as flashy nor as brilliant as the Nage Waza. Properly executed, however, they will allow you to defeat your opponent instantaneously. Katame Waza and Nage Waza are equally important, and practicing both will help improve your judo.